me dice que me quiere, que vivir sin mí no puede, que lo agobian los momentos en que no estoy junto a él, que siempre me había esperado, que era quien había soñado, la que su mamá quería pa' que fuera su mujer. Ay. En que mis ojos son estrellas, que mi risa es la más bella, que todos mis atributos son perfectos para él, que si fuera un retratista, que si fuera un buen artista, yo sería su Mona Lisa y hasta un tango de Gardea. Y eso no lo trago yo. Quiero que tú sepas que tú no eres para mí, que tú no eres para mí. Siempre supe pero no hice caso, que ni se te ocurra aparecer por aquí con tus enredos y cuentos baratos. Quiero que tú sepas que yo no soy para ti, que yo no soy para ti. Siempre supe pero no hice caso, que ni se me ocurra estar de nuevo junto a ti, estar de nuevo junto a ti. Mi corazón no aguanta más fracasos. Que me promete la luna, que yo soy como ninguna, que parezco una doncella de esas que hay que proteger, que sus vicios ha dejado, que su sueldo le ha aumentado, que me promete la vida que yo siento merecer. Y eso no lo trago yo. Quiero que tú sepas que tú no eres para mí, que tú no eres para mí. Siempre supe pero no hice caso, que ni se te ocurra aparecer por aquí con tus enredos y cuentos baratos. Quiero que tú sepas que yo no soy para ti, que yo no soy para ti. Siempre supe pero no hice caso, que ni se me ocurra estar de nuevo junto a ti, estar de nuevo junto a ti. Mi corazón no aguanta más fracaso. Y yo, que tanto me decían que no me convenías, que eras mi destrucción, y siempre yo tratando de dejarte. Tu día ya llegó, tu día ya llegó. Quiero que tú sepas que yo no soy para ti, que yo no soy para ti. Siempre supe pero no hice caso, que ni se me ocurra estar de nuevo junto a ti, estar de nuevo junto a ti. Mi corazón no aguanta más fracasos.
Alrighty, everybody. Back. It's Thursday. Some of you, it's Friday. We got a holiday coming up. We got the day off. A long weekend. Oh, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody in between, it's time. Brain domain. Hey, 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 hey. I said, hey, what's what's going on. Chat, how you doing today? It's Thursday. Welcome back to the Brain Domain, and let me just tell you, I got a big burrito. So. Big burrito kind of day. Alrighty, everybody. We've got the question box link pinned, so we'll give that a minute and see what sort of stuff pops in there. But in the meanwhile, let me show you what we've got planned for today. If you're not already in the Discord, consider stopping by. One of the things that we've been discussing in the Stream Ideas channel is some different areas for presentation topics. We've done a lot of, done a lot of theory, we've done a lot of techniques. And so one thing that people were asking for, a little bit more, maybe like a little deep dive, maybe a little bit more of a little moment from history. And so that's what we're gonna do today. Yesterday's presentation was so powerful. See, that's the thing, the presentations, they're powerful, but I don't want to overload you. So we're going to try to mix it up a little bit. So for today's presentation, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look back in history, and we're going to talk about the Rosenhan experiment. We're going to talk about one of my favorite studies. Ever heard of it? We've briefly mentioned it. I had a slideshow once. I had a presentation once. It was a sort of collection of all sorts of famous cases, and this was one that we mentioned. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that one. The title of the study was On Being Sane in Insane Places, so that's why we've named it as such. What happens when you voluntarily commit yourself and you portray symptoms, and then once you're committed, you stop showing any symptoms? That's what this experiment went to figure out. So that's what we'll be getting into later. Savvy with the 3 years. Let's go. 3 years. Time has flown. You got Skeenerbug with the 21. Let's go. You're getting old. Not as old as me. Me first. So anyway, this one will be fun. This one, this just a little sneak peek. This happened back in 1973. And it was a study just designed to determine how well can mental health professionals tell between sanity and insanity. So, you're in for quite a ride. You're in for quite a ride. It's a wild one. It's one of my favorite ones from history, so excited to do that here in a bit. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. We're on a hype train right now. We're hype training. I'll take some bites of my burrito for the hype train. Cheers. You just had a burrito too? Wow, we're so in sync. Go ahead and give it a minute for those questions. In the meanwhile, how are you doing today? You have any plans for the upcoming weekend? Where are my red-blooded patriots? It's the 4th of July. Hell yeah, it is. Where we celebrate the military-industrial complex by buying small-grade explosives and giving them to our children. But no, all things considered, it is a good time to hang out with the neighbors, hang out with the family, maybe blow up a thing or two. It's the American way. My new man already paid for a Botox appointment. I think I'm in love. He checks all the boxes. Does he like dogs? Well, I'm feeling pretty chill today. Like I've said, we've got a fun presentation to do. As far as right now, I'm just living life. So how are you feeling today? You notice I gave myself a little trim. Trimmed up a little bit. It was getting a little scraggly. Had to do some maintenance. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Thankfully, you know what to do about it. You're a professional. See, there you go. We've got the copy pasta ready to go. I've got these dogs in here. They're hanging out with me today. Just snoring in the background. I heard the first firework of the day at like 11 a.m. People have been periodically lighting off fireworks for the past week, and then every night they've been lighting them off. Not until tomorrow night. No, it's yeah, the actual celebration is tomorrow night, but people love to blow stuff up. They'll be out here blowing stuff up the week leading up to it, and then they'll have stuff left over for the next couple days. The vendor submitted over 300 pages of invoicing to me that I just printed out. Hey, you gotta remember that some delays are to be expected. It's the holiday weekend. An important part of an office regimen is taking time to figure out who or what you can blame whenever there's a delay. I wouldn't care if my boss was not always on my ass about being faster. That's when you turn to your boss and you say, "Boss, you know what would help me go faster? Money. Let's do this." I work at the speed that I'm paid. A bit of hustle. Grease those wheels, partner. If we get no questions in today, that means mental health is cured and we can all go home. So, won't that be something? We did it. We did it. And there were doubters. There were people who said it couldn't be done. Or we just have fun. What is that? Fun? Never heard of it. I could use some help finding inspiration. I have to write a paper regarding men's mental health and I can't find an angle. Anything in particular about men's mental health? An idea that I've been mulling over for a future presentation. Talk about the oppression of the patriarchy or capitalism. Yeah, we've been there before. One of the angles that I've been thinking about men's mental health is many men are grieving. And because of that, they manifest it in the form of anger and hostility. Men are grieving because they feel like they have to adhere to these certain roles that just don't mesh with their humanity. They have to, they have emotions, but they feel like they're not able to express or present their emotions without being judged or criticized. Men just want to have fun. It's for the masculinity class I'm taking. You wanted to learn all about that masculine energy. Ate my whole burrito and we're just getting started. I need to save some for later. help myself. I just keep nibbling. We're advised to use online sources, and I was considering one of those alpha camps. Oh yeah, the main one got shut down. It's no longer a thing. I think I was scrolling through my notes. That's what I was trying to find, because I do have some notes on the topic. Many men are aware of the nature of the system that we live in, but they feel compelled to participate in that system for reasons that they don't fully understand. It's frustrating to them, even though they have to participate in it. And so in many ways, you know, there's a lot of grief over things that they've lost, but they've been stripped of their ability to put those feelings into words. And so all they're left with is the anger. Angry men noted. It's not just about men being angry, it's about anger being the only thing that men have left that's socially acceptable. And it's not entirely socially acceptable, that there is a shift happening. The way I view it is that to really be a man, you can't be afraid of your emotions. If you're avoiding your emotions, that says to me that you are afraid of feeling those emotions. Whenever you live a all you're doing is guaranteeing more pain. regret taking this class. It's too heavy for a chill summer class. My favorite chill summer class was about serial killers. That was a nice, nice chill class. Book of Revelations class I took last summer was great. When I went to Catholic school for all of 1 year, there was a class where we had to study the Bible, and I was always just fucking off and just looking through the Book of Revelations. I'm like, what's this crazy shit back here? Whoever wrote that was on one. Who did write the Book of Revelations? I forget. Also known as the Apocalypse of John. That's the lamest name for an apocalypse I've ever heard. The Apocalypse of John. The Army of Dave. Christian.net using AI art. Okay. This is where we're at now. I don't know, this kind of looks badass. This reminds me of Magic the Gathering, is what it reminds me of. The Revelation of St. John the Divine. If I'm gonna be honest, that kind of sounds like a drag name. You wear Dragon Tamer Jesus? I honestly would. I would wear a shirt with Jesus riding a dragon. That sounds pretty badass. Hey, how's it going? How you doing all the way out there in Serbia? Alright, we've got a question in the box. Let's take a look. Alright, places, people. Places. Send something to the question box. Oh, okay. We're about to get to it. My box is all misaligned. Let's fix it. Hello. Today I had my friend send me a video of her crying. Not unusual, she does that sometimes. I asked why she was crying, and she said something like, "I don't know anymore. I just can't stand this. I will go crazy." Then she texts me, "If I do something to myself, don't worry and stay safe." Then she went outside. Didn't have internet to receive my messages. I check on the chat a few hours later. My message was seen. I ask what that's about, and I receive a text from her sister saying that it's her and that my friend is in the hospital, possibly due to a poisoning, and that she drank some pills before that. A few texts later, she says her parents called and that she didn't understand them fully, but it was about something like her passing out. I just don't know what to do right now. She is prone to suicidal stuff, but she means a lot to me. Like I couldn't bear it if she dies. Let her know. Tell her that. It sounds like she was really going through something, but thankfully there were people around her to support her. You know, it sounds like she does have some family around and she has some friends around like you that are supportive. All that you can do is let people know how you feel. It's going to be up to them whether or not they accept it, you know? You know, if you worried, if you would be sad, if you would be hurt, if something were to happen, let her know. You know, thankfully she's, you know, in the hospital and getting attended to. That's something that's really scary to go through, especially when you feel helpless and on the outside. Thankfully, she's where she needs to be right now. Problem is, I got no idea if she's safe. Well, they said she's in the hospital, right? If she's in the hospital, then she's right where she needs to be. Because she's really going through it right now. I do just want to talk a little bit about what do we do when somebody comes to us with this type of stuff? What do we do when somebody comes to us and they say they're feeling some type of way, they're thinking about, you know, doing something to themselves, or they're expressing these, you know, ideas of being hopeless, or this is the end, or whatever it might be? It's really important to remember that the weight of all of that isn't just on you. You want to ask the person, is there anyone that you've talked to about this? Who could we talk to help you with this? You know, we're not professionals. We want to try to always gently redirect people towards professional assistance and support. Sometimes we feel like the burden of all of this is just on us, and that's not fair. You know, and it's not a problem for just us to solve. So just give them some space to talk about how they feel. Try your best to be supportive. And try to continue to give those gentle encouragements to talk to a professional about it. Just ask them, is there anybody you've talked to about this? Have you talked to a doctor about this? Have you talked to a counselor about this? Who all have you talked to? Because the truth is this kind of stuff happens pretty commonly, especially in, young friendships. A person will come to you and they'll tell you how they're feeling, and they'll tell you, you're the only one I can trust. You're the only one I can talk to about this. I don't know of anywhere else to go. I don't have anyone else to talk to. And then we feel as if their life is in our hands. We feel the burden of that responsibility. We feel like they've got nowhere else to go. They've got no one else to talk to. And so it's up to me. And it's really important to remember that when a person needs support, they need a support system, not just a support person. And so when a person is struggling, we want to try to find ways that we can gently encourage them to access the resources that they need. Have you talked to anyone about this? I have a number for a crisis line. Would you like to talk to them? Would you like to try it? I'll call them with you. Have you talked to a doctor about this? Who have you talked to about this? Can you call on behalf of someone if they don't want to? In most cases, no. You can call with them, and so that's why I would encourage you to do that. You can't call someplace and be like, hey, yeah, I'm worried about my friend. And they'll be like, okay, well, are they an adult? Yeah, well, then we can't do anything. Sorry. They're going to have to call. But what you can do is you can tell your friend, you can tell the person that you're trying to help, like, hey, let's call somebody. I'll call them with you. And that way they feel that extra layer of support, because it's a scary place to be. Especially when you feel really alone with it and you're crying out for help. So as stressful and as sad as this situation is, thankfully she's getting the help that she needs right now. So just keep being a good, supportive friend. That's all you can do. I just want to ask chat real quick. Have you ever been in a situation where someone came to you and disclosed stuff like this, and you were made to feel like you're the only one they can talk to? You're the only one they can trust? Have you ever been in that position? Isn't it incredibly stressful? Kind of, but not really. But you can at least imagine what it would be like. That stress of, somebody who feels like they can only talk to you, they can only confide in you. And while you want to be available and be supportive, you need to recognize that it's not fair to put somebody in that position. It's not fair to come to somebody and make them feel like their fate is in your hands. Also, just as another reminder, whenever we are trying to be supportive and help people, Sometimes the best thing to do is to just be present. Just be there. Just listen. You know, it might not be so much about saying the right thing or doing the right thing, but just showing up. That's what really matters. Also, her sister says anytime she tried to help that she would get angry at her. Why do you think that might be? It's not easy to ask for help. It makes you feel vulnerable, it makes you feel weak, and it can make you feel defensive. You know, and so sometimes when somebody shows up and they're like, hey, I'm here to help, it's like you might resist it, even though it's something you need. There's an art form to it. Being supportive, being helpful in a way that people will accept. Because if a person is feeling really down, they might not feel deserving of the help. They might feel like they don't want to be a burden or they don't want to bother you by asking for help or by needing help. So you show up and you give them the help anyway, even if they get upset with you. One time my cousin posted a very red flag message on Facebook and I was the only family member to see it, so I contacted his mom and grandma to make sure he was okay. He had tried self-harm, but it didn't get far after I intervened. It's a tough call to make, but you did the right thing. Lots of people see those types of red flags and they just try to move past them or forget them. You did the right thing. It's also normal to... Okay, we talked about how sometimes people can get angry when you show up and you're offering them help when they're really struggling. That's normal. That's to be expected. What normally happens, though, is once they de-stress, once they kind of level back out a bit, they're not angry at you. They're angry at how they were feeling. They're angry at the stress. They're angry about the situation. It's important to just be able to distinguish when is a person actually mad at me and when is a person mad at the situation and they're just taking the anger out on me. Also, important note that Zany made, follow up. Follow up. Consistency is key. Because you want to try to be mindful of what's going on here. If people only show up, if people only are available, and people only want to be helpful whenever I do something drastic, then what am I learning? I'm learning that if I want people to be around, I have to act out. And so you want to be consistent. You want to keep showing up, even when there's not a cry for help. What happens to some people is that they find themselves in the position where the only time people show up is when they cry for help. And so every day ends up being a cry for help. We've got some more questions in the box. Let's keep it going. I was out with a group of friends the other night, getting high. Oh, look at you. Aren't you cool? Group of friends? That must be nice. Eventually, when I had to walk home, I started feeling surreal and hearing my own footsteps loud as I walked home. I only thought about getting home, so I walked even though the surreal feeling kept getting worse. When I had only a couple of blocks left, I started hearing noise inside my head. It was like my head was filled with the loudest and most horrible cacophony of sounds that didn't come from the outside. I only knew I had to keep walking. Ooh, I know what that is. Hold on. Side note, I know what that is. It sounds like you experienced a little bit of what we refer to as exploding head syndrome. For a lot of people, it happens when they're on the edge of sleep, but you were high, so that could also explain it. Exploding head syndrome. It's when you hear loud noises in your head. For some people, it wakes them up from sleep. For some people, it might be, during other circumstances. But for most people, it's something that will wake you up out of sleep. You'll feel like somebody's pounding on the door. Somebody's ringing the doorbell. There was a loud bang outside. What was that all about? The interesting thing about EHS is that it can be a one-time thing. It could be something that happens all the time. Let's try something real quick. I'm gonna turn off the music. I just want you to think about a noise. Think about the sound of rain. Think about the sound of rainfall. Tapping on the roof. Falling into puddles on the concrete. Slapping the leaves in the trees. When you think about a noise, you activate the part of your brain that produces the response to actually hearing that noise. And so when you focus intently on hearing a sound or on a specific sound, it's almost as if you do hear it. Now with stuff like this, what we were talking about here in the question, sometimes just focusing on a noise that we're hearing or a noise that we are experiencing in our head can actually make it louder. If it makes sense, what I feel like was going on here is you were hearing your anxiety. Does that make sense? Your head was full of just this loud and terrible cacophony of sounds. That's what anxiety sounds like. And you were high, so you might have been experiencing a little bit of synesthesia. One of the things that can happen when you're high is it can blend your senses. You can start to, blur the lines between your different forms of sensory perception. And as such, you can have unexpected things like this happen. I go to the beach in my meditation visualizations. The sight, sound, and smell all get activated. Touch sensation too. You're bringing up a really good point. This is something that you can do with meditation and focus, is you can produce a sensation without actually being wherever that thing is. If you were to just sit there and think about, what would it feel like to be swimming? What would it feel like to be floating? What would it feel like to be flying? You can feel it. You do it all the time in your dreams. Kind of cool how the brain works. Anyway, let's get back into this question. My mind felt like it wanted to quit and give up, and I started breathing deeply in and out and kept on walking. I was afraid the surreal feeling and constant noise were something that would stay with me for the rest of my life. That's anxiety for you. Oh no, it's gonna be this way forever. Oh no, it's terrible. It's gonna persist indefinitely. That's what anxiety does. But I also hoped it had to be temporary and everything would get better if I just got home. I managed to keep on walking and got home, but I forgot if the noise extended before or after that. I brushed my teeth, took a shower, still kind of feeling like I didn't even exist, but at least I could make my body do the normal things and go to sleep afterwards. When I woke up, I felt still high, but the dread and noise were gone. I think it was my first panic attack because the mental symptoms sound exactly like it, and a little bit extra. I don't know if I had any of the physical symptoms though, because I could still walk ahead and control my breath. Even if you were having a physical panic attack, you can still control your breath. It's a little bit more difficult to do, but you can still do it. At least I know it's temporary if it ever happens again, but it was the worst thing I've ever experienced, so what could I do to alleviate it if possible? Well, let's think about that for a minute. We know that we can create these types of sensations. You can imagine a noise. If your mind feels like it's being bombarded with noise, then use your mind to change it. Think of a song that you like. Hum it to yourself, sing it to yourself. I think already you handled it really well. You took measures to ground yourself. You found yourself, safe and comfortable, and that's what you want to do. So you're already doing what you should do. But I think to just take it to the next level, just remember that you have more control over what goes on in your brain than you might realize. And so if I feel like my mind is being bombarded with noise, let's change the station. Let's put on some music. Let's sing. Let's hum. Let's pivot. To me, and this is just me theorizing, I think something about, walking home, being out there, and also being under the influence just made you feel extra anxious. And because of the sensory distorting effects of THC, you were basically hearing your anxiety. Anxiety is not normally something that you hear, it's something more that you feel. But certain substances can blend the senses. Is it actually true that opposites attract? It's somewhere in the middle. It's somewhere in the middle. This isn't a question with a clean answer. It's not I can't give you a yes or no. What a lot of people like to do is they like to have people in their life that complement their skills. Maybe I'm good at one thing and you're good at another thing, and we can, my strengths can cover up your weaknesses and your strengths can cover up my weaknesses. And so in some ways, we do seek out people who have opposing skill sets because they actually complement our own skills, and they make it so that we are more prepared and more equipped to handle whatever it might be that comes our way. Now, in other cases, sometimes people, let's think of an example here. Let's say that you grew up and you were just a good little Christian. You grew up and you were a good little Christian. You went to Sunday school, you never partied, you didn't sneak out, you were always on your best behavior. What can sometimes happen to people is they might find themselves wondering what it's like on the other side. And so they might overcorrect And so they might actually seek out stuff that is the complete opposite of what they're used to, because our minds kind of have a binary way of thinking about things. We tend to break things down into black and white. And so sometimes when we are trying to seek out something new, we might go a little too far. So, do opposites attract? Yes, but that doesn't always mean that it's meant to be. That doesn't always mean that it's meant to last. One of the things that the human brain loves to do is experience new and novel things. So that's what it'll do. It'll seek out things that are outside of its normal experience. It likes the spice. It likes the variety. And sometimes, as a result, we end up going with things that are the complete opposite of what we used to do, or what we normally do. So who's the opposite to a hedgehog? Good question. Something that likes to hug. It's Newton. Oh, him? This guy? Absolute unit? Okay. Well, now I'm just interested in figuring out that question. So a hedgehog has spines. It likes to dig around in the dirt. It likes to go in a burrow. It tends to like to isolate itself. It curls up into a ball. What does the opposite of all those things? Who likes to be in a group? Who likes to be social? Who likes to cuddle? What if I only like to cuddle but not be in a group? Then you're a different animal. You're something different. It's an elephant. Now, elephants love being in a group. Elephants have funerals for their dead. Like elephants grieve. They love being in a group. We got another question in the box. Let's take a look. Dealing with a shitty work situation. I took over a project for someone as they are retiring, and I was only briefly shown how to do it. It seemed straightforward enough, so I've been reviewing forms like they taught me to for a few months now, and my supervisor is sort of freaking out and asking me a bunch of questions about it that I don't really understand and don't recall being part of what I was trained for. And so I was trying to explain this to him, that I haven't had an application come through that requires that stuff, but have had similar situations that I approved, and I'm honestly not sure if they're the same situations or different ones, since the protocols he's mentioning to me aren't ones I've had to do. Most of my involvement has just been to review, but now I'm worried that I've been either doing something wrong or haven't been told about this other aspect of the project. So now I'm very worried that I'm in trouble or something, but I'm new to this and it's not like I knew to ask, so is there anything else you need to train me on before you leave? To the person who trained me. Right? It's like, it's not really on you. You're just doing what you were told to do. I feel like I often get blamed for not knowing something when I was never taught it in the first place. You just described how many people feel about their parents. I really can't afford to lose my job, and we are trying to schedule a meeting with someone else now to try and get better clarification, but my anxiety is very worried. I'm not sure how to navigate this situation or how I could have prevented this if I didn't know about it or wasn't trained properly or told about these other scenarios. It's sort of a complicated situation, but I'm trying to explain it the best I can without doxing myself too much. All right. I feel like this is a situation in which the CYA rule applies. Who here is familiar with the CYA rule of working in an office or in any other type of job? Yeah. Who's familiar with the CYA protocol? CYA. It stands for cover your ass. What that means is you want your instructions for whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing, and you want them in writing. And so you want to ask your supervisor, hey, I just need some clarification on some things. Could you tell me explicitly what it is? And then you want a paper trail. And that way, you're doing exactly what they're telling you to do. And it's not on you to just figure it out, because that's what supervisors are supposed to be there for. They're supposed to be there to help you to figure out what it is that you need to do. All our paper trails are in emails, LOL. Exactly. It's like you want it to be in email, you want it to be written down, because that way, if anything ever does come your way and they're like, hey, why weren't you doing this thing? You can be like, well, on this date, I corresponded with my supervisor and we talked about doing this thing, and I asked them very clearly, is this correct? Is this all that needs to be done? And they said, yep. So... And I understand that it's like silly and confusing and like it feels unnecessary, but that's a lot of work environments for you. I feel like you've got nothing to worry about if you were just doing what you were taught to do or doing what you were instructed to do. So we just want to make sure that there is a paper trail that vouches, you know, just in case. So just ask for clarification. Just make sure that everything looks good. I kind of have to be vague because you also kind of had to be vague, so I'm not sure exactly what it is we're doing or what these protocols are or what we're talking about, but either way, in most work environments, if the issue comes down to a person not being trained properly, it's not normally on the person. It's on the person who is supposed to train them. After long soul seeking, I have finally found out I am of a third gender. Pity it took so long to understand. Hey, better late than never. Better late than never. The way I see these types of things is it happened when it was meant to happen. Would it have been nice if it happened earlier? Maybe. But maybe I just wasn't ready for it yet. Or maybe, you know, things still needed to be put into place. So we should celebrate that things do happen, but we don't need to, you know, tarnish that celebration by saying, I wish this had happened sooner. There are not that many people I can talk with about it locally, so here it is. I felt it needed to be written somewhere as well. Came out to one trans friend, but still need to gather the courage to tell a few others. There you go. Congratulations. Big W for you. I find gender interesting. Isn't it interesting? Now, gender is a social construct, so don't ever feel like you have to live up to somebody's definition of what a person like you should or should not be. You are who you are, and that's what matters most. Alrighty, we're caught up for now. We've got our presentation lined up. So that'll be fun. I'm gonna take a quick bathroom break real quick. Take a quick bathroom break before we get into the presentation. We're gonna talk about a really interesting psychological experiment from the 70s. So you won't want to miss it. We'll be back here in just a minute. Until then, enjoy these cats. Look at that one, he's on a skateboard. What are you doing? Oh. Sleeping? Are these cats AI generated? We got computers making cat videos now? This is crazy. Oh, I haven't updated the link for today's slides, so if you were hoping for a sneak peek, the link is from yesterday, so. All right, I'll be right back. Okay. Okay, we're back. Oh, we're back. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. All right, everybody. Today we've got a presentation where we're going to talk about an experiment. We're going to do a little bit of a historical deep dive. We're going to look back at a study that was done in the 1970s, commonly known as the Rosenhan experiment. Some of you may have heard of this before. For many of you, this might be new. But either way, it's going to be quite a trip. So, are we ready? Are you ready, kids? Alrighty. Alrighty, everybody. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the Rosenhan experiment. This experiment was conducted in 1973 by a psychologist by the name of David Rosenhan. This experiment would go on to challenge the credibility of psychiatric diagnosis as we knew it. The study itself was titled On Being Sane in Insane Places, and it was all about figuring out just how effective mental health professionals are at distinguishing between sanity and insanity. The main hypothesis of this experiment was, if healthy people present with a single fabricated symptom, would they be identified as sane once inside a psychiatric institution? We're going to explain just how the experiment went down. But it's important to know that the results of this study revealed some pretty big flaws in how mental illness is diagnosed and treated. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what they did. Here is the setup. For this experiment, 8 individuals, which were referred to as pseudo-patients, meaning these were the participants of the experiment, and they came from many different fields. Some of them came from the field of psychology, some of them worked in pediatrics, some of them were painters. Different fields of life. Rosenhan himself participated in the experiment. And so what did these 8 people do? Well, each of them called psychiatric hospitals and claimed that they were hearing voices. They were given these fake symptoms and they kept it very specific. All of them reported the same thing. The specific words that they were reporting that they were hearing were empty, hollow, thud. The reason why they chose these specific words was because they were vague. They weren't linked to any specific psychotic symptoms. And so, outside of just these fabricated symptoms, the people who were participating in the study were truthful about their history, and they behaved entirely normally. And the only thing that they said was the symptom was, well, I hear a voice and it's telling me empty, hollow, thud. And everything else was just normal. Now here's something important to know, is that once they were admitted to the hospital, all of these pseudo-patients immediately stopped simulating symptoms. As soon as they were admitted, they were just as sane as they could be. So this is how the experiment was set up. Just off the get-go, isn't this interesting? Can you imagine something like this happening today? This was the 70s, and if you know a little bit about psychiatric history, it was the Wild West for a long time. So, just in quick summary, Dr. Rosenhan and 7 other people all admitted themselves into psychiatric facilities, and they all were reporting the same symptoms. And they did this at different hospitals across the country. None of the hospitals were ever actually named, so we don't know where it actually happened. It was kept confidential. I feel like it would still happen today in certain places. It would. It would. Well, no, you know what? After deinstitutionalization, which we'll get to later, there was this deinstitutionalization movement in the 70s, and the barrier for entry to get admitted, it changed. Back in this time period, they would institutionalize you just for if you were, if you were quirky enough, maybe you thought a little bit differently. But nowadays, whenever they institutionalize people, they have a pretty firm threshold. Is this person at risk of harming themselves or at risk of harming others? And if the answer to both of those questions is no, then they're probably just going to send you packing. and I've had firsthand experience of trying to get people into a hospital. I had this one client I was working with who was very symptomatic. He had untreated schizophrenia. He was unmedicated, very symptomatic. And he kept like, yeah, his parents were just like, he can't stay here anymore. He's just like, the stuff he's doing and the stuff he's like threatening to do, it's just like, he's got to find somewhere else to go. And I was like, well, I could try to get him into the hospital. And they're like, sure, do that. And so we went there, and they were like, well, is he suicidal? Has he threatened to kill anyone? And I was like, well, no. They're like, well, then we can't take him. I'm like, but you see him right here now in front of you, right? Like, you see how he's behaving? You hear the things that he's saying? And they were just like, nothing we can do. So that's kind of where we're at now. Now, that's not going to be everywhere. You definitely could find yourself hospitalized in different places because they, you know, might follow an antiquated set of rules. Like, in bigger metropolitan areas, the institutions are going to get over full because they don't have enough resources as it is. They don't have enough beds. And so they have to turn a lot of people away unless they're pretty dire. But if you live in a more rural area, it kind of just depends. Mental health is a mixed bag, you know? Depends on where you're at and who you're talking to. Anyway, this was how the experiment was set up. So let's talk about what happened. In this case, a woman's mom was very wealthy and powerful and hired a corrupt doctor to say the daughter was a danger to herself. She's currently suing. Good. That doctor should have his medical license revoked. Alrighty, so we talked about how the experiment's set up, we've set the ground, and as you can assume, this is a wild tale. So let's talk about what happens, because it gets even weirder. So, what happened was, all 8 of the pseudo-patients were admitted with a serious mental illness. None of them were turned away, and just remind yourself what the symptoms were that they were portraying. Just auditory hallucinations. 3 words. Most of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia. One of them was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but they were all diagnosed with serious mental illnesses. From one symptom. What happened when they were inside was they were all instructed to take notes on the experience. This was part of what they were doing, is they would go into these facilities and you need to document what happens. In most of their cases, the hospital staff interpreted their, diligent note-taking as a symptom. This is just something that's, they do it because of their illness. They're like, oh, because of their illness, they write everything down. They document everything. The average length of their hospital stays was 19 days. Altogether, they ranged between 1 week and 52 days. Is that an actual symptom of a mental disorder? It depends. If I'm writing down stuff and it's coherent and it makes sense and you can actually read it and understand what I'm trying to say, and it's not just like word salad, or I'm drawing like math equations, or I'm not like, you know what I mean? Like when a person is actively psychotic and they're just jotting stuff down, because they will do that. They will just like fill pages. You can tell. You can tell. But these persons were just taking notes. Like it was coherent, you know, just like, all right, today I was admitted, that my doctor's name is this, you know, I met such and such, my room is like this, you know, there's a common area, and there's a ping pong table, and, you know, whatever. Can you imagine being the unlucky patient that ended up having to stay for 52 days in this experiment? That's what I always think about. I'm like, damn, one of them just really just had such a hard time getting back out. 52 days. Now keep in mind that after all of them were admitted, they all stopped showing symptoms. As part of the experiment, they were to immediately just start acting normal again once they were in. You tell them you have a symptom so that you can get in, and then once you are in, just act as normal as you can. Just be yourself. None of them were recognized as being an imposter. Ironically, several of the patients raised suspicion that these people were either journalists or researchers. The actual patients knew. The actual patients could tell, but the hospital staff could not. That right there is one of the most just hilarious details to me of this event. The people who were actual patients are like, something's off about them. They're just writing everything down that's happening. You know, they're just, you know, like, are they a journalist or something? Like, are they a reporter? Like, what are they doing? Like, even they knew. And I think a big part of that is just perception. When you are a hospital staff and you work with patients, there's a sort of us and them idea. Whereas when you're a patient, you know, you kind of just view yourself as a person, and everybody else is a person too, and we're all just people. And so they don't judge people based on a perceived position of power or authority. You know, they view people as more equal. When they were discharged, they were all noted as being in remission. In none of the discharges were they ever, you know, told that they were misdiagnosed. They're like, hey, I know you came in and you said you were hearing voices and you've been here for 52 days and you said that you haven't heard voices since you got here. We didn't misdiagnose you though. Like, we diagnosed you correctly. You're just in remission. And that's kind of what they do still when it comes to diagnosing people, is you don't really ever get a diagnosis removed. You can, but it's not the easiest thing to do. What most people end up doing is they end up getting a note on their case file that says they have this diagnosis, but it's currently in remission. And that's always, not sat well with me, because I like for a person to be able to, feel healed, Whenever something is just in remission, there's always just this lingering, well, for how long? How long is it gonna, when's it gonna come back? You ask the doctor to get rid of the diagnosis, and all you get is a note by the doctor that says patient believes they do not have the diagnosis. It's true. Like, even if you're an expert on brains, you're not an expert on that person's brain. You know what I mean? Like, we need to establish a greater sense of agency with people. It's all giving One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I did a bit of time. I did a bit of time in a state hospital due to some excessive alcohol. Isn't it wild how alcohol will do that to you? Alcohol's no joke, man. Saw an alarming amount of recreational patient ass kicking from the orderlies. Nothing would really surprise me about less than decent performance in that kind of facility. Yeah, those types of environments are not fun. There's a lot of really, it's comparable to the prison system, and in some ways it's probably worse. Anyway, this is the outcome of the study, but let's talk about what this means. Let's talk about the implications. What this experiment revealed was that once a person has been labeled as mentally ill, all of their behaviors are viewed through a pathological lens. What that means is that everything that you do, I'm just going to assume that it's a part of you being mentally ill. If you get angry, you get frustrated, you get sad, it's like, oh, is that a symptom? Now, stuff like this might seem more obvious to us today, but this was the 1970s. This was very groundbreaking for the time. People weren't very aware of their own inherent biases. People were having ordinary behaviors, such as taking notes, pacing, being polite. These were being treated and interpreted as symptoms of whatever illness they were diagnosed with. The staff often failed or, ignored the pseudo-patient's requests. They had a hard time making meaningful eye contact with them. And this really highlights just how dehumanizing institutional care can be. This is why many trans people choose to live in stealth even today, a lens that changes how they are seen in everything they ever do. Right? You know, because everything is looked at through that lens of transness. I've got a few trans friends, and you know, you get to see some of what they go through and what they have to, you know, tolerate. And something that, you know, happens pretty regularly is as soon as somebody finds out that you're trans, they just want to ask you all the questions about transness as if you are the representative of transness. You know, oh, I've got so many questions. And so people are just being put into this position where they feel like they have to explain their own existence, and then they have to do it again and again and again, just to everybody they meet. Everybody's got questions. It's exhausting. Findings of this study suggested that a psychiatric diagnosis can lack objectivity. What they were finding was that doctors and medical providers were having a hard time being objective. There was a lot of bias. They were looking more at context rather than a person's actual symptoms. All right. Now here's where it gets... Here's the twist. You ready for the twist? Because there was a follow-up. I think I said earlier that one of the details of this was the funniest part of this to me, and that's not true. That was actually a lie. That was the second funniest thing. This is the funniest thing. What happened in the follow-up. So, Rosenhan publishes his study, and hospitals look really bad, and it kind of just turns the psychiatric field on its head because, you know, we're becoming much more aware of these biases and mistreatment and, you know, the lack of humanity in the field. And so, one of these hospitals, it just says one hospital. It may have been one of the ones involved in the experiment. It may have been an entirely different one. Because, again, we don't know what hospitals that they went to. That's always been confidential. So anyway, there was a hospital that was offended by these findings. They're like, we don't do things like that around here. We know what we're doing. We would be able to sniff them out. You wouldn't be able to send fake patients here. We would be able to tell. And so they challenged him to send more pseudo-patients their way so that they could show them their ability to detect them. And so Rosenhan agreed. He let the hospitals know that, all right, over the next 3 months, I will send one or more fake patients and attempt to be admitted. And so during this 3-month period, the hospital felt like they confidently identified 41 out of their 193 new admissions as potential pseudo-patients. How many do you think Dr. Rosenhan actually sent? Dr. Rosenhan had in fact sent 0 pseudo patients. One of the greatest trolls in the history of psychology. He's like, all right, you're so good at sniffing out fake patients, I'll send some your way. Just keep an eye out for them over the next 3 months, all right? They're like, all right, we'll get them. Found 41 of them. Nice try, Doc. If you only take away one thing from this presentation, I just want you to remember this tidbit, because this is the funniest thing. This is the funniest thing in today's presentation. So this whole incident was a great highlight of how the power of expectation and diagnostic judgment can be easily swayed by things such as context and prior knowledge. What do we mean by that? Well, people who work in the medical professions, or who work in the mental health field, they have these, human brains that form patterns, and they see patterns forming, and they're like, okay, well, this person reminds me of this other person. That other person had this diagnosis, so this person probably has this diagnosis too. Or, I'm working in a hospital. The people who are going to be here are all going to be severely mentally ill. Why would there ever be a sane person here? Why would I ever assume anybody here to ever be sane? Sane people don't come here. And so you just need to be aware of, how am I restricting my own worldview? Am I relying too much on my prior knowledge? We should always be questioning our own biases, especially if we feel like we have no biases. If you feel like I have no biases whatsoever, I am a completely unbiased person, then you especially need to be aware of your own biases. We've all got them, folks. We've all got them. All right, let's talk about what happened as a result of this study, because there was a bit of fallout. Understandably, this study caused a massive stir in the psychiatric and psychological communities. Now we're questioning the reliability of diagnosis. We're questioning the nature of mental illness. This was quite a revolutionary piece for its time in psychological, in the psychological fields. It helped to expose just how inadequate a lot of these psychiatric institutions were. They had people on the inside who could document what they were going through and how they were being treated and how they were being dehumanized. And so, as a result of this, both public and professionally, there was a much broader approach to reforming mental health. People were becoming much more critical of institutionalization, because this was the 70s. And up until this point, institutionalization was the normal. If a person was severely mentally ill, they more than likely were in an institution. up until this point, where we started to deinstitutionalize. Now, deinstitutionalization came with its own implications. It came with its own consequences. But something did need to change, and so what you saw was more community-based treatments. You're going to see more community mental health centers start to pop up. You're going to see crisis centers. You're going to see day treatment centers. You're going to see partial hospital programs. You're going to see all sorts of new forms of treatment to meet people where they're at and to meet people based on their needs within their own communities. You know, instead of getting shipped off to the state hospital or whatever. Now, in the 1970s, there was a big push for deinstitutionalization. This study added a lot of momentum to that. It also pushed for some big changes within the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's the book with all the disorders in it. Now, deinstitutionalization, we could see why that would be in some ways a positive. You know, you're getting people out of these, inhumane conditions, but what ended up happening as a result? Can you take a guess what one of the biggest consequences of deinstitutionalization was? I'll give you a hint. We're still dealing with it. We still haven't figured it out. Exactly. A lot of these people had nowhere to go. And so you saw a huge rise in homelessness. Which is why today you see a lot of people who are, unhoused, and they're also dealing with mental illness. And so many of them either find themselves living on the street or living in prison. Just a quick side question for everybody. Do you know who the largest provider for mental health care is in the United States? The Department of Corrections. The prison system provides the majority of mental health care in the United States. All right. So as you can see, this case really helped to change the field. And so this is why, this is part of why I wanted to talk about it today, because this really was a groundbreaking landmark moment. Not just for how we viewed diagnosis, but how we treat people when they're ill. Now, this case was not without its criticisms, and so for the sake of, balance and fairness, we'll go ahead and talk about those as well. So this was a very influential study, but it was not one that was free of criticism. Any popular enough study is going to have its critics. In this case, what critics argued was that Rosenhan wasn't transparent enough. You know, and this is something that you used to be able to do in psychological research. You could use this deception, you could mislead, you could, you know. But that's not really the case anymore. You can't really do studies without people knowing that they're being studied. And so that's one of the shifts from back then. Like, as I said, the 1970s was the Wild West for psychiatric experimentation. You know, you're seeing stuff like this. You're seeing the Stanford prison experiment. You got the Milgram obedience studies in the 60s. It's like they were doing some stuff. So another criticism was that the results were difficult to replicate. And so, in the years following, some researchers have questioned whether the pseudo-patients truly behaved normal after admission. I don't see why they wouldn't. You know, this is just speculation. I personally don't see why they wouldn't. You know, why would you, you know, you're trying, the goal is to leave the mental institution. Why would you do anything to keep you there longer? Just to make the hospital look bad? Just to stay longer to gain more intel? I don't know. There were also some ethical concerns. The hospitals weren't informed ahead of time. You know, maybe if they knew what to look out for, they would have had a chance. They also weren't given the opportunity to consent, which is nowadays a really important part of doing any type of research or study, is consent. But again, it was the 70s. And also the consideration for how this could have affected the other patients within the facility. You know, if they're taking resources away from other patients. Now, I don't know how impactful it actually would have been, but again, these are just some of the concerns and criticisms that have been brought up. And again, the hospital's identities were never actually revealed, so these things weren't able to be externally validated or followed up on. And despite all these critiques, this is still a widely studied study. It's in textbooks and psychology courses all over the place. It's got a nice dramatic impact. I still remember learning about it in school. I remember the class I learned about it in, because I remember whenever I learned about this one, I was like, it was a real eye-opener. The study was so impactful, it still matters today. You know, it's relevant because misdiagnosis, overdiagnosis, and stigma are still very common in the mental health field. We should always be reflective of how we're treating people, especially those who have these types of labels attached to them. You need to remember the human and not just view them as the diagnosis. And this stuff still happens. You know, I've seen it working in the field. I've seen people do it. You know, make assumptions about people. And that's primarily the form that it comes in, is just assumption. They're going to do this, they're going to act this type of way, the reason why they did this was because of this. So even though we've made a lot of progress since then, we've got better diagnostic manuals, we've got better training, we're much more aware of how subjectivity and bias can affect the way that we treat people. They're still there. It has gotten better, but we've still got a long way to go. Another thing that's really important that this reinforced was the importance for patient-centered care. You can't forget the human that you're working with. We want to listen to individuals. We want to hear what they have to say. We want to know what it is that they're experiencing. We can't just reduce them down to a diagnosis. Thankfully, we have gotten better about this, but you do still see it a lot, and that's frustrating. So, in learning about it, you can be a part of the solution. Going forward, in this era of digitized health records, algorithmic diagnosis, and with AI looming over us, these questions are still pressing. Are we truly seeing the person or just the label? Go ahead and wrap it up. Psychiatric diagnosis, it's a powerful tool. A lot of smart people have put a lot of time and effort into creating our current diagnostic system. And in spite of its flaws, it's still utilized all over the world. But you gotta remember that it is not perfect. It's not infallible. It's important to remember that context and expectation can heavily influences a person's judgment, even when it comes to clinical judgment. Once a label gets applied to somebody, it can shape how that person is perceived. It can change how we interpret their behaviors, and it can also change how they view themselves. It's really important to recognize just how much power there is in a label. When you have a label assigned to you, you may start thinking and acting in ways that reinforce that label. It also changes how other people will view you and treat you. The Rosenhan experiment did a lot to open up for some long-needed reforms in mental health care. And it also serves as a lasting reminder of just how important empathy, critical thinking and humility are in psychological practice. So here we are, 40 years later, still asking ourselves that question. How do we truly know what is sane or insane? Measure is how much is affecting your life. Yeah, we measure sanity based on how much does it impact your life? How much does it disrupt what it is you're trying to do? Can you take care of yourself? Can you have a job? Can you cook for yourself? Can you schedule an appointment if you need to go to the doctor? And also, how much stress does it cause you? There are a lot of things out there that we won't necessarily view as being a problem as long as it doesn't stress the person out about it. Like, oh, you never leave your home and you never talk to anybody and you don't have any friends? Well, you don't mind it? Well, then I guess it's not really a problem. Another thing that's really important to remember is just how much we tie together mental health with productivity. Can you work? Can you spend 8 hours in an office making somebody else money? Can you go stand in the sun and, dig holes or whatever it is people do when they work outside? Oh, you can't? Well, there must be something wrong with you. Let's go ahead and diagnose you with something. Under capitalism, not wanting to participate in capitalism is viewed as a mental illness. Bruh, you're telling me you're not out there making that grind? You're not out there grinding 16 hours a day? You gotta be stacking that paper, bruh. 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 Do you even have a sports car, bruh? Bruh. Do you even have a mansion, bruh? Sometimes I just feel a little bit despondent that we live in a system that labels you as mentally ill if you have problems with the system that you live in. This has given me a lot to think about. Like, I love people. Like, humans are so incredible and they do so many wonderful, brilliant, amazing things. And then on the other hand, they can be just the absolute worst, most despicable things that you could even possibly imagine. And I don't know how to feel about that. Anyway, this has been the presentation on the Rosenhan study. Do you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? It's a lot to wrap your head around. I remember learning about this for the first time when I was an undergrad, and I remember it really sat with me. I found it to be very eye-opening. So I hope that you've enjoyed, I hope that you learned something, and I hope that it's given you something to think about. If you liked this style of presentation, I'll probably do more like this in the future, where we do a little bit more of a deeper dive on a specific, study, whether it be like an individual case study or an experiment or, just some period of time in the history of psychology. If you liked this style of presentation, I'll be sure to work more into future shows. This is what we do for fun. I don't know if I could volunteer for a study like that. I don't know if they'd ever let me back out. Be like, hey brother, I'm not actually crazy, by the way. I'm part of an experiment. I made up my symptoms in order to get here. Like, I've just been taking notes the whole time so that I can report back afterwards. So you can just go ahead and let me go now. It's fine. They'd be like, this one is experiencing delusions of grandeur. He thinks that he's actually behind everything. He thinks that he's actually, running the show. So we need to go ahead and let's go ahead and just up your Thorazine. I wonder if they actually took the medications. I wouldn't. Well, it depends. Depends on what the medication is. Probably not. Most of what they were giving people back then were varying degrees of tranquilizer. Have you doing the Thorazine shuffle? The world's least popular dance craze. That's a real thing, by the way. It's not me joking. The Thorazine shuffle. It's in reference to the involuntary movements that a person would develop as symptoms, or side effects rather, of Thorazine. I've been wanting to ask if anyone independently verified the actor's sanity before they went to the hospitals. You know, the thing about sanity, like, that's kind of the broader conversation here when we start to talk about this topic, is that it's like, you might think I'm sane, but if you sat me down in front of somebody who has a completely different worldview from me, they might think I'm insane. Like, so you're telling me he wants to house everybody and that everybody should have food? That's crazy talk. This man is insane. And so your question actually brings up a really important discussion, and it's actually the title of the stream today. What is sanity? The thing about sanity is that it's subjective. You know, if I'm in Rome, I'm going to try to do as the Romans do because that's what they would view as sane. But if I'm going to go to Rome and not do what the Romans do, they're going to think that I'm crazy. Or think about people who grow up in, like, evangelical religious communities, or people who grow up in, like, essentially cults. You know, they're born into this, like, belief system, and they've got all of these different rituals and all of these different practices, and for them it's normal. And it's not until you get outside of it that you realize just how crazy it is. And so sometimes things can feel sane when you're in them, and it's not until you are outside of them that you can realize just how insane it was. And in many cases, this is also how it feels to be actually insane. One of the trickiest parts about treating people who are in a psychosis is that, well, a lot of what they're thinking makes sense to them. You know, it might not make sense to anybody else, but it makes sense to them. Whenever you are crazy, you don't always feel crazy. If I have spirituality and get put in the bin for it. True. They've also pathologized a lot of, like, spiritual beliefs as well. They're like, oh, you believe that your ancestors are watching over you? You believe that your ancestors are sending you positive messages whenever you're having a bad day? And that they're sending you signs? They're, you know, a flower, a bird. Like, those are mystical beliefs. That's mental illness. This is why we don't like overdiagnosis. It takes a lot of the fun out of the world. You're like, can't think that. You believe in ghosts? You believe in Bigfoot? You must be crazy. Like, nah, maybe I just like to have fun. Did you ever hear of prevalence-induced concept change? This will be new for me. A cognitive phenomenon where people's definitions of concepts expand as the prevalence of those concepts decreases. This means that as problems become less common, individuals may start to identify more behaviors or instances as problematic, often without realizing it. It's a big part of the reason why sometimes people have a hard time ever feeling satisfied. Like just moving the psychological goalposts on yourself. I'm used to viewing a lot of problems, and maybe I don't have as many problems anymore, but I'm still wired for finding a lot of problems, and so I'm going to see them in places where they might not be. Put the study in the Discord. Nice, thank you. You know what else is in the Discord? Squirrel cheeks. I think it's definitely something to always be mindful of. What am I wired for? You gotta give yourself time and patience as you try to rewire yourself. You might find yourself engaging in old learned responses as you start to move away from those responses. Robin here. Hi, Robin. I'm about to hit the gym after dancing last night. I'm sure other people can relate, but how the fuck do I listen to my body? By moving when you need to move, and by not moving when you need to not move. I like to do it by quieting the mind and opening the heart. Just putting my awareness into my physical form. What's my body telling me? What's it need? Right now it's telling me that I could probably use a salad, but I'm gonna ignore that for now. I have Hashimoto's disease, an autoimmune disease, and stress can trigger a flare-up. Can. It's not guaranteed. So if we possibly change our relationship to stress, I don't even have to feel like I'm pushing it that much, and bam! I'm down for a week. My immune system flares. But I am determined to be more healthy and fit. I will go to the gym and be active. But I just don't know how to tell, am I tired from existing, oversleeping, mental exhaustion, or do I actually need a day to veg? If it helps, I'm neurodivergent, so I have a hard time listening to my body and feelings in the first place. Most neurodivergent people that I know probably have an easier time listening to their body. Maybe not so much their feelings, but at least, their senses. I'm not just asking as like a therapist question, but more so just asking other humans who know how to be human help. When you go to the gym, stay at the gym long enough until you feel satisfied about the time that you were at the gym. For me, I set that threshold pretty low. You know, even if I'm just going to get some stretching, even if I'm just going to go and like walk around a bit or, you know, pedal around on the bike a little bit, it's better than nothing. It's the way I look at it. And so I think what you should try to focus on is the feeling of being satisfied. What is your relationship with satisfaction? Generally work out until my muscles feel like jello, then you might be going too hard. I think what you're trying to look for here is, what is it that I'm looking for that will make me feel satisfied? Is it that I don't feel satisfied with the time I've spent at the gym unless I'm exhausted, unless I've just worked myself into the point where I just can't even lift my arms anymore? Is it that that's going to make me satisfied? Because if that's the case, what we need to look at is our relationship with satisfaction. Maybe we're holding the bar for satisfaction too high, and maybe we could lower it down a little bit. Try to find something that's a little bit more fair, a little bit more balanced. So it kind of depends on what your long-term goals are for being at the gym. Like, do you want to get shredded? Are you trying to get jacked? Are you trying to get buff? Or are you trying to just maintain? You know, you're just going just to, because going even just for a little bit is better than not going. You know, just to stay active. Be an old lady at 25. I was an old lady at 25. There was nothing wrong with it. So what I would say to do is to look inwards, do some introspection, a little bit of meditation, and try to find the knob or the dial or the switch, where whatever it might be in your brain. You know, it's your brain. You know, maybe you got buttons, maybe you got knobs. Who knows? Find the one that adjusts the level of your satisfaction threshold. In all seriousness, I think just taking more time to just be introspective, to just be present and mindful and aware of what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your body. It'll help you to find that balance that you're looking for. The thing that you're dealing with is that you're a badass, and so you assume that you need to do everything like a badass would do, but in reality, it's okay to just take it easy. It's okay to take your time. It's okay to go slow. Mic going in and out. Yeah, the mic's probably going in and out because the mic's a piece of shit. But you probably caught most of it. What I was saying is when you're a badass, you try to do everything in a badass way, and you don't know how to take it easy. You don't know how to just be chill. We need to remember we don't always need to be in rock mode. Sometimes it's okay to take your time. Sometimes it's okay to take your time. Not rush. I'm not even in rock mode. I am clay. Even better. You know, maybe instead of working as hard as you can at the gym for half an hour, maybe work half as hard for twice as long. And just see what that does. I've found that I can get more satisfying workouts if I just pace myself a bit. You know, take time to do some stretching. You know, my favorite thing to do at the gym is stretch. Stretching is an underrated workout. You can get a really good workout just by doing a great stretch. It's my favorite way to exercise. Do that at home, but they've got stuff at the gym that can take it even farther. One of the things I like to do is, you know, hold some weights and then stretch. So it's got like, I've got a pull going from the other direction. You know, I like to scared of the stretching machines. Oh. They're nice, but they're not necessary. Like this thing, where it's like the chair that goes backwards. I love that thing. I should start staring at men while they stretch. No, but you should maintain prolonged eye contact with anyone that stares at you. catch anybody staring at you, just do this. While all the women are getting their cardio in, the guys think they're the shit because they're being looked at. You know, maybe, but we also don't know. Like, unless you want to go up and ask them. We don't need to be doing any thinking on behalf of anybody else, you know? We don't need to assume ill intent on anybody else's part. When I go to the gym, I just put my headphones in and try to pretend I'm the only one there. I use the cardio machines at the back of the gym so I don't have to boost their ego for them. Well, no, see, here's the thing. That doesn't work because if they're ego-driven, they're gonna find ego boosts in just about anything. Oh, she went all the way to the back of the gym. I'm so hot she couldn't even stand to be near me because she was just so flustered. She had to go all the way back there. I was just too hot to handle. See, you don't want to plan your life around egotistical people because they're always going to make it about them. They're always going to find a way to twist it to their own ego. So just don't cater your behaviors to them. It's not going to work. Wow, they're all staring at me. I must be so hot. Wow, nobody's looking at me. They must be too intimidated by me to even look at me. See, either one. An egotistical person can twist it to their advantage. That's how they work. So don't try to outplay them. Wow, nobody at the gym is looking at me. They must think I'm so great and so intimidating. They can't even. They're afraid to look at me. They're too shy to even look my way. So yeah, don't adjust your own behaviors centered around other people's egos because they're gonna find a way to satisfy their ego one way or the other. So do what you want to do. I think I'm the only crazy person that likes talking to other people at the gym. You know, there's nothing wrong with talking to people at the gym as long as you're not overbearing with it. You know, like what people need to be better at is just recognizing when the other person that they're talking to is just done with the conversation. Like, it's totally fine to like go up to somebody and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Having a good workout? All right, cool. Have a good day." Like that's like fine, okay, whatever. But it's when you're just standing there and you're just like, "So you like doing the leg lifts, huh?" People are gonna be like, "What? What? Huh? What?" thing that I find, I don't know, I'm confused about how I find it. I was gonna say I find it funny because in some ways it is kind of funny, but it's also kind of like unnerving and unsettling. Like how people who are, you know, a little bit creepy, you know, they come across as a little bit creepy. It's like they just do not view themselves that way. They're either oblivious to it or they like it. There's not really much of an in-between. Too introverted to start conversations, but when someone talks to me, it can be interesting. What if you had the opportunity to not only start a conversation, but also end the conversation? What's the worst that could happen if, you know, just in passing you said, "Hey, have a nice day"? One of my favorite things to do when I'm out in public is whenever I make eye contact with people, I smile at them and then try to get them to smile back. Just go. Just a big cheeky grin. Just I give them one of those. Works every time. Well, most of the time. Some people are just miserable. I'm always afraid people are going to come up to me and tell me how I'm doing everything all wrong. Has that ever happened? See, this is why you wear headphones. Because if somebody comes up to you and they're trying to talk to you, you can be like, "What? I can't hear you. I have my headphones on." "No thanks, I'm good." The 4 magic words. "No thanks, I'm good." Send them packing. And if they keep bothering you, just go find a member of the gym staff and be like, "This person's just won't leave me alone." Somehow it seems terrifying, but I can't quite say why. That's anxiety for you. It just assumes the worst, but it doesn't even necessarily understand what that could be. So let's look at it then. Let's say you were to just, you know, maybe you're at the store and you make eye contact with somebody who works there or somebody else who's shopping and you say, "Hey, have a nice day." What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? They stop you and they're like, "Hey, no, you don't get to talk to me. You don't get to tell me to have a nice day. Who the fuck do you think you are? Being out in public and you acknowledge my existence? You direct words my way? How dare you?" No one's gonna do that. And if they do, just walk away from them because they're crazy. 99.9% of times when you say to somebody, "Hey, have a nice day," they say, "Thanks, you too." And so in those slim circumstances that something else would happen, just walk away. You don't have to stay and continue to engage with them. Not at the gym, but every time I lift something at work, my manager is like, "You're lifting it wrong." You know what you should do? Because this is what I would do. I would say, "Okay, show me." Just get him to lift it for you. Just put it down and be like, "Okay, show me." Just step back. Be like, "All right, go ahead. I'm watching." That was my favorite thing to do at work whenever somebody would, tell you that you're doing something wrong. Be like, "Oh, okay, go ahead and show me how to do it then. I'm a visual learner. Can you go ahead and do it and I'll watch?" I need more purple shirts. I think this color looks good on me. Just saying. Anyway, we were talking about anxiety. Anxiety likes to assume the worst, but it doesn't always understand or know what that might look like. And so, one of the ways that we can manage anxiety is by engaging with it. Like, alright, anxiety, you're worried that the worst thing is going to happen. What would the worst thing be? Okay, and once I understand what that could potentially be, what would I do about it? How would I navigate that situation? Okay, well, I would stay low, keep my head down, and scurry off to safety, like I would do in many precarious situations. But the trick is to go one step beyond it. You know, anxiety likes to ask you the question, what's the worst thing that could happen? And what you want to practice doing is also asking yourself, what's the best thing that could happen? What if things went right? And this is because that part of your brain that is able to like look forward and plan for the future, it's the same part. It's the same part that feels anxiety. It's the same part that feels excitement. And so whenever you do that, you are training that part of your brain to not only respond with what's the worst that could happen. You're going to teach it that there are other options. And the reason why your brain does that in the first place is because it's just trying to protect you. It's just trying to keep you safe. It's a survival mechanism. It's meant to be a tool. All you got to learn how to do is wield that tool. You can get it working for you instead of against you. It always upsets me because I'm just trying to be helpful and he's over there reminding me of my deformed spine. Do you think that's what he's trying to do? Is he trying to make you feel bad? Is he trying to remind you of that? Or is he trying to just look out for you so that you don't, like maybe he's concerned that you're gonna hurt yourself lifting something? I don't know. What do we think it is? No, he's just a dick. Then make him lift the box. Like, alright, you're gonna tell me I'm not lifting it right? Okay, you go ahead and show me how to lift it properly then. Alrighty, everybody. Well, it's been a nice chill day. I think I might call it a little bit early because we need to get some stuff from the grocery store. So I might go run and try to do that this afternoon. So anyway, we'll be back again tomorrow. It'll be the 4th of July. We'll be here for Friday. Thank you all for being here. I hope you had a good time. Hope you all have a great night, everybody. Stay safe out there. Hope you have a great night. See you all tomorrow. Have a good night, everybody. See you next time. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.